Hey, it's Dr. John Terry, the Black Belt Leader, and welcome to the Black Belt Leadership Podcast, where each week I'm giving you tips, tools, insights, and resources to help you become a better version of who you are and what you do as you discover, develop, and deploy your own Black Belt Leader within. Growing up, my dad was a bivocational pastor. Now, if you don't know what that means my dad was pastoring a small church that couldn't afford a full-time pastor. So dad worked a 9 to 5 job in a young men's clothing store in Fort Smith, Arkansas, and every Sunday and every Wednesday night, dad would put my mom, my sister, and I in the Rambler station wagon, and we drove 50 miles each way for really almost 7 years so my dad could pastor this small startup church in the little town of Heavener, Oklahoma. Now, on Sundays, my family would stay with one of the local congregation members. It really accomplished a couple of things. It avoided us having to drive back and forth to Fort Smith 2 times or having to get a hotel room and burn the little bit of money that dad received from the church just on travel expenses. But it also allowed us to connect at a deeper level with the families in the church. Now, one of the families that we stayed with was an older couple who loved my mom and dad, and they were very gracious to my sister and I. And they had a garden and a hen house in their backyard. So my sister and I got an opportunity to learn about taking care of chickens and gathering the eggs and working with that part of learning to be in a farming type community. And my dad was taken out into the garden where he had an opportunity to learn the basics of gardening. Now, I didn't think a lot about it. And, my dad spent about 7 years there before he felt it was time to move on. And dad resigned the church. And shortly after that, our family and I relocated to Russellville, Arkansas, and finished high school and went on to college. And about the time I entered college, out of the blue, my dad, who had left the clothing industry and had become a partner in a furniture business, decided that he wanted to plant his own garden. So in the corner of our backyard in Russellville, Arkansas, where we were growing up, my dad mapped out this little area and he tilled the soil. And it was there that he began to plant some tomatoes, some corn, some potatoes, some strawberries, and occasionally some okra. Now, I can tell you the first year or two, it was definitely a learning experience for dad. Matter of fact, the first year, he tilled that garden with a hand push tiller. And I can promise you, as hard as that dirt was, dad got a great exercise in every time he went to work in his garden. But after a year or two, dad bought a powered tiller and it made life a little easier. But about year 3 or 4, dad kind of figured it out and he got pretty good at basic gardening. And every year the garden got a little bit bigger or a little bit wider. And he even went behind and got permission from a neighbor to go into the area between our property and theirs and expand the garden for a few years. And dad's garden at that point really got pretty big. But every spring, I would watch my dad drag that big old heavy tiller out of the shed and he would go power that up and he would push that tiller back and forth over the area that he had designated as his garden to till the dirt and turn it over and break up all of the clods of dirt until it was smooth and the texture was just right. And dad prepared the garden for next year's planting. Well, one afternoon, I'd finished my classes from college and I came home and I knew it was about the time of year that dad would be tilling the garden. So I got this brilliant idea. Yeah, you probably know where this is going, to give my dad a surprise when he got home. And I wanted to give him a head start on this year's planting. So what did I do? I went out to the shed. I pulled that big old tiller out. I made sure it was full of gasoline. I lined that tiller up where it needed to go, started up the mower, stuck the tines in the ground, put the engine into gear, and I started turning over dirt. And boy, did I turn over the dirt. I turned it over not only once, but twice, but 3 times. I went back and forth over dad's designated garden area many, many times as I'd seen him do, but I wanted to do an even better job than I'd seen him done. So I tilled the soil probably 3 or 4 times before I was done. And I can tell you when I got done, I was really proud of the work that I had done. That dirt was perfect and ready for dad to come in and simply start planting seed and get all of his pieces in place to create this incredible harvest later in the year. Well, I packed everything back up and just kind of put it in there and couldn't wait for dad to get home so I could tell him the surprise that I'd done for him. So when dad got home, I met him at the door and I said, "Dad, have I got a surprise for you?" And he looked at me kind of confused, and I took him by the arm and we went right out the back door into the backyard, and I walked him right up to the garden and I said, "Look, Dad, I knew it was the season that you till the garden, and I wanted to do something nice for you. So look what I've done. The garden is ready for you to get started." And I stood back with all the pride that I could have, big smile on my face as I watched Dad look at this neatly tilled, richly exposed dirt that you could smell the richness of the dirt from the work that I had done. And I'm waiting for Dad to either give me a big hug or a pat on the back and say thank you. But strangely, my dad didn't immediately respond. He stood there a little bit shocked. And then he walked a little closer to the designated garden area, and he stood there quietly for just a few moments. And then he knelt down by the edge of the dirt and began to look even closer. Well, at that point, I thought Dad was inspecting the quality of my work and was really going to praise me for the great work I'd done. And then Dad, with his finger, beckoned me closer. So I knelt down beside my dad, and Dad took his finger and he pointed down into the dirt to look at several little places along one of those rows that I'd carefully and thoroughly tilled. And Dad began to point to what looked like little whiskers pointing up out of the ground. You guessed it, I had torn up the strawberries. Because what I didn't know is that in Arkansas, strawberries are planted in the fall. So Dad had planted his strawberries without my knowledge sometime in late September, early October, giving the plants time for the roots to firmly establish before winter set in. That way, when the spring rains came, the roots were fully prepared to receive all of that moisture and produce a healthy and productive crop of strawberries so my mom, my sister, and the neighbors could enjoy them. Every year between April and June, Dad's garden always produced an abundance of strawberries. That is, until this year. Now, in my exuberance to be a helper, what had I done? I had destroyed all of my dad's hard work from the prior fall, and I ended the chances that my mom, my sister, and my neighbors were going to be enjoying strawberries later that year. And in destroying the roots, I also destroyed the fruit. Now, you need to understand that a root system is essential to success because without a strong established root system, no plant can grow, much less grow to its full potential. And if a plant can't grow to its full potential, it can't produce an abundance of healthy fruit. So a strong root system is going to be essential for any plant because it's going to provide critical functions like the ability to absorb water and nutrients from the soil and to provide an anchor to hold the plant firmly in place and to store the food and energy the plant is going to need to grow. Now, the roots ground the plant to the earth. It provides stability and strength. And when a plant is firmly anchored in the soil, the roots are going to prevent the plant from being uprooted by the windstorms and the rainstorms that we often saw in Arkansas in the spring. Now, not only is the root system important for plants like you would see in a garden, it's essential for trees that have to grow tall because the root structure of a tree is critical for its structural support. If a tree doesn't have a strong root system, it can't grow tall and it can't grow wide without falling over. Now, many plants store food and energy reserves in their roots. Now, this is especially important during the dormant times, like in the winter, or when conditions for growth aren't ideal, like during times of drought. But that stored energy can later be used to kickstart growth, to help the plant reproduce and continue to grow and expand, and it can help the plant with other essential processes so that the plant can stay alive. Now, roots also serve another important role, and this is one I found out recently that I thought was very interesting. Not only do the roots allow the plant to draw nutrients from the soil, the roots help to improve the soil's very health. So how does it do it? The structure of the roots growing down into the soil creates pathways for air and water to circulate through the soil. Whether it's grass or plants or trees or any type of plant, that root system creates small conduits into the ground that allow air and water to grow. And without air and water, there can be no growth. Now, the root system also serves another essential process in the soil, is that it allows soil particles to combine together, which helps to prevent erosion during times of heavy rain. Now, the root system also interacts with the microorganisms in the ground that allow the plant to access water and literally pull nutrients from the soil. And this is what helps to feed and support the plant. So if we think about really what is the plant's root system, it's its lifeline. It provides the foundation needed so that the plant can not only grow and survive, but it can interact with its surrounding environment and ultimately produce fruit. But remember, there is no root without the fruit. Now, it's interesting, this symbiotic relationship between the roots and the plant itself, because as the plant grows, the leaves that it grows provide the root system with shade from the sun and shelter from the rain. So it helps to protect the roots from being overheated in times of high heat and to be washed away in times of heavy rain. Now, in turn, the roots strengthen the trunk, or what is often referred to as the shoot of the plant, and that provides the nutrition that the plant needs so that it can ultimately grow the branches that will later bear the fruit. So if you think about it, the fruit is totally reliant on the root for its existence. The fruit doesn't do anything but just grow. It simply abides, waiting for the opportunity to grow itself. The fruit simply draws sustenance from the shoot, which draws its sustenance and its nutrition from the root. It's this symbiotic relationship of one supporting the other that ultimately leads to the success of the plant. And like a plant, you and I, we need a strong root system if we want to live fruitful, successful lives. So if you think about it, the fruit is nothing more than the byproduct of a strong root system. So that begs the question, why do so many people pay so much attention to the fruit and not enough attention, if any at all, to the root? Well, I can tell you why. Because it's easier to focus on what we can see rather than focus on what we can't. You may say, John, what do you mean? Well, fruit is visible. You go to an apple tree during the growth season, you can see the apples growing. The same is true with a pear, an orange, any type of tree that grows fruit. You go to a strawberry plant, you can see the strawberries growing. You go to a stalk of corn, you can see the ears of corn growing. So fruit is visible. It's easy to see, it's easy to measure, and it's easy to show others. An example of fruit in our lives would be our outcomes, our results, and our behaviors. Fruit, as it relates to you and I, is an observable outcome, or it's the tangible result of a process that we're engaged in. The fruit is essentially what we can see and other people can see or hear or experience that's emanating from our lives. The old adage, a tree is known by its fruit, still rings true today, because what comes from the root is what ultimately is going to create the fruit. Now, what do I mean by that? A person's character, their true nature, is revealed by their actions or their deeds. This is their fruit. Their character, played out in the actions and choices they make, is ultimately the fruit of their life that's put on display for others to see. Now, when you think about it, the fruit is visible, but the root's not. The root of our lives is often unseen by others, and it's rarely, if ever, examined by ourselves. That's why you hear me say often 95% of the people in the world live average, mediocre, lackluster lives because they never take the opportunity to look within and to see what's there and what's growing and cultivating in their lives that's ultimately going to be displayed in the way they live their lives and the fruit that they display to the world around them. Now, what am I talking about? I'm talking about our deep-seated beliefs, our values, and our motivations. Now, these things are typically out of sight to the rest of the world, but it is our beliefs, our values, and our motivations that ultimately are going to drive the choices that you and I make, the actions that you and I take, the words that you and I speak, and ultimately the outcomes, the consequences of life from the choices we've made that you and I experience. What we are on the inside is ultimately revealed by the fruit other people see on the outside. Now, let me say that again. What we are on the inside is ultimately revealed by the fruit others see on the outside. So, focusing on the root of our lives requires inspection. Now, this is going to be a challenge for every single one of us because it's going to require that we have to have a very candid, honest observation and conversation with ourselves about what's growing on the inside of us. And again, not only is that going to be challenging, it's going to be an uncomfortable conversation. But if we want to maximize not just the quantity of our fruit, but also the quality of the fruit that we're producing, going inside and having that introspective conversation with ourselves to see what's growing there, to look at our values, our convictions, and our beliefs and our motivation, that is going to be essential to our success. Remember, fruit is a byproduct of a strong root system. And if you want the fruit of your life to be excellent, then it has to start with what's on the inside. So just like a root system grounds a plant to the earth, a strong belief system supported by strong values is going to ground our character in truth. And it's going to motivate us to live a life of excellence, not being willing to settle for good enough, but every day striving to be just a little bit better than the day before. And when we've got a strong belief system that's grounded in our values and grounded in our character, that allows us to remain anchored. That allows us to live consistently and persistently, even in the midst of adversity. Now, just like a plant, our root system is what feeds us. It's what gives us what we need to continue to grow. Now, that's why you hear me say often that personal growth, daily personal growth, is so important. It is literally essential to our success because daily personal growth is what provides us with the nutrients that we need every single day to become a better version of who we are and what we do. Now, it's in times of doubt that personal growth sustains us. And it's at other times when we're not in drought, but we're in times of plenty, that personal growth helps us to grow, to expand, and to reproduce by teaching others to do the very same thing that we're teaching ourselves to do, to go inside and to examine our beliefs, our values, our character, and our motivations to make sure that we're grounded in truth and excellence. So in reality, personal growth is the elixir of success that feeds our root systems what it needs for us to be able to develop a quality and quantity of success in our lives. Now, the other thing I'll mention about a strong root system is you not only got to have positive beliefs, you not only have to have strong values, you've got to have healthy relationships. All of those together are essential for our well-being, and it's essential for our ability not just to bear fruit, but to bear good fruit and lots of good fruit. So by focusing on the root, what are we doing? We're creating the opportunity to increase not just the quantity, but the quality of the fruit that is being produced in our lives. Now, that really begs the question, what are the benefits of having a strong root system grounded in personal growth? I believe there's three strong benefits that I really want to focus on in the few minutes we have together today. Now, the first, when we look at personal growth as the elixir of success that feeds our root system and allows us to grow and reach our full potential, personal growth provides us with stability and grounding. It's going to give us the strength we need to withstand the storms of life. A strong root system is going to help you and I develop the habits and the behaviors that build resilience so that we can keep going even when the going gets tough. You know, in life, you and I are all going to face challenges. We're going to face obstacles and we're going to face setbacks. But it's our habits and behaviors that are developed through resilience, strong character, strong values, strong belief system, strong motivation, and a strong network of encouraging, supporting friends. They're going to help us make it through. Now, the second benefit of personal growth in helping build that strong root system, personal growth provides us with a sense of identity and a sense of belonging. Because when we are learning and growing, we're discovering who we are, why we're here, and what we've been called to do. And then we're equipping ourselves with the skills, the knowledge, the talent, and the ability we need to go fulfill our purpose and our calling in the earth. Now, not only does it help us do that, that strong sense of identity and purpose and belonging that comes from personal growth also allows us to surround ourselves with like-minded people who are going to help us accomplish our purpose. They're going to help us do what we can't necessarily be the best at doing, and they're going to come alongside and lend their expertise because together we can achieve more than what you and I can achieve on our own. But when we're engaged in personal growth, knowing who we are, why we're here, what we've been called to do, and equipping ourselves to do that, and surrounding ourselves with like-minded people, they're going to help us accomplish our purpose, what happens? We're going to boost our self-esteem, and we're going to have a supportive network of individuals who, number one, believe in us, number two, are willing to come alongside and support us, and number three, they're going to be there to encourage our continued growth, and they're going to hold us accountable to doing that and seeing success. Now, the third benefit of personal growth in building that strong root system you and I need in our lives is this. Personal growth is going to strengthen our persistence and our perseverance. It's going to help us continue to dig our roots deeper, even when the results aren't immediately visible to the naked eye. Remember that strawberry plant that my dad planted. He planted it in September, October, and it grew all during the fall, went dormant in the winter, and then exploded in the spring that brought forth this amazing growth. I couldn't see what was going on underneath the ground, but there that root system was persisting and persevering so that at the right moment, growth could explode. That's what I'm talking about in this third benefit. Because when we dig our roots deep and we focus on daily becoming a better version of who we are and what we do, relentlessly pursuing excellence and trying to become better every single day than we were the day before, this allows us to grow even larger over time in terms of our influence, our impact, and the results that we're going to experience, as well as those that are on our team. And that to me is exciting because when we can grow and we become larger, we now have the ability to influence more people, to impact more people, and to experience greater results in our lives. Now, to me, this is essential if we want to realize our potential, exceed our potential, and really strive to become that black belt master of success that you and I are striving to become. You know, in ancient Chinese culture, they talk about the bamboo tree quite a bit. And if you go study bamboo species, one of the things you'll find about many of the species of the bamboo tree is that for many species, the first few years of its development are spent establishing a strong root system. You don't see a lot on the outside. Very little, if any, visible growth is is available to the naked eye. Now, what's going on the underside in the ground as this root system is being developed? This bamboo tree is laying the groundwork, building the foundation, creating the necessary support for rapid future growth of that tree. And all of a sudden, after a period of time, once that root system is firmly established, that bamboo tree begins at an accelerated process of springing forward. And with some versions of bamboo, You can almost literally see the growth as it happens from day to day. Now, this to me is a great visual reminder that patience and persistence are important. And if you want to establish a strong, deeply rounded root system, it's going to take those two things, patience and persistence. But that's necessary and essential if you want to have, like the bamboo tree, exponential growth in the future. You know, Og Mandino said it well, and I use this quote quite often in the podcast. I will persist until I succeed. And if you don't believe that's true, ask the wild fig tree. Now, the wild fig tree grows in South Africa, and it has been documented having roots growing as deep as, get this, over 400 feet below the surface. This wild fig tree has the deepest known roots of any tree in the world. And the deeper the roots, the more long-lived and the more fruitful that tree. Now, think about that in your own life. The deeper your roots in personal growth and professional development, the more long-lived and the more fruitful your life is going to be. So a strong root system that's fueled by personal growth, at the end of the day, it's mission critical for our success. It's kind of like that Mission Impossible opening where it says your mission, should you choose to accept it, your mission is to build a strong root system fueled by personal growth. You can't see success and experience it at the highest level without it. Now, that strong root system is going to provide us with stability that's going to anchor us even when we face the challenges and struggles and setbacks that life is at some point going to throw our way. That strong root system is also going to provide us with a sense of identity and a sense of belonging that's going to boost our confidence, that's going to help us be equipped and empowered to accomplish what we've been put on this earth to do. And it's going to help us to expand a network of like-minded people who are going to come alongside, rally to the cause, and help us achieve our purpose and our calling in the earth. And also, that strong root system is going to build the resilience that we need as we patiently persist and persevere, growing our roots deeply in the ground, strengthening us as we go through the process of going deeper so that we can grow taller and wider and ultimately bear more fruit and better fruit. But remember this, to have a strong root system, you and I, we've got to be planted in the right place so we can optimize our opportunity to go deeper, higher, and wider. Now, in the Bible, there's a parable that's called the parable of the sower. And whether you're a person of faith or not, this story has application to your life. So let me share the story, and then I'll give you the moral. And it's pretty straightforward. In the story, the parable of the sower, a man, goes to sow seed for a harvest. Some of the seed that he scatters falls on a hard path, a roadway, where it is quickly eaten by the birds. Other seed that the man scatters falls on rocky ground. It immediately sprouts up, but it quickly withers away because the rocks will not permit the roots to be grounded and go deep. Now, other seed that's scattered falls among thorny ground, an area full of weeds and thorny plants. And as these seeds try to grow up, the thorns and the weeds impede the growth, and it chokes out the seed's ability to go deep and to go wide and establish a strong root system. So there may be some growth, but it's going to be very, very little, and it's going to be impeded by everything else around it. But the rest of the seed that's scattered is scattered on good, fertile soil. And when the seed lands on good, fertile soil, what happens? It takes root, it grows, and it produces an abundant harvest of fruit. So the moral of the story is simple, and you may have already figured it out, and it's this: where we plant ourselves matters. Not all soil is conducive for our personal growth. And who we surround ourselves with matters, because where we're planted and who is surrounded around us that's also planted in that same area can either inhibit our growth or it can accelerate it. And once we're planted, our mission is not to focus on the fruit, but to focus on the root, because the fruit is a byproduct of a strong root system. So we've got to focus on going within and establishing what is necessary so that the fruit that we grow is going to be the very best in quality and in quantity. You know, legendary basketball coach John Wooden famously said this: there is a choice you have to make in everything you do. So keep in mind that in the end, the choice you make makes you. Now, think about that when it comes to number one, where you're going to plant yourself, and number two, who you're going to surround yourself with. There's a choice you make in everything you do: where you plant yourself, who you surround yourself with, and the nutrients that you pull up through where you're learning and growing. So keep in mind that in the end, the choice you make makes you. What is he ultimately saying? What we become on the inside is ultimately what we're going to become on the outside. A tree is known by its fruit, and a healthy root is going to lead to healthy, abundant fruit. So here's my challenge to you as I wrap up today's podcast: focus on the root, not the fruit. Dr. John Terry, the Black Belt Leader, thanks for joining me. Have a great day.